Hi folks, Ashley L. Jones here, author of Modern Cast Iron. I am still working on Skilletheads, and that is the follow-up book that focuses on the collecting and restoring of cast iron cookware. And we can't talk about collecting without talking about all of the wonderful new manufacturers that are out there. So today I have with me Miss Alisa Toninato, and she is the founder of American Skillet Company. And I'm so excited to finally have her here today. We've tried a couple times, and so today it's going to happen.
Today's our day. Yeah,
it's going to happen. Yeah, I'm so glad that we were finally able to do this. American Skillet Company is very unique. I know I say all companies are unique, and in a way, all of them are. But American Skillet Company is the only one that manufactures skillets in the shape of the states of America. So very, very cool, very on point, very American. And so I want to hear all about it. And first I want to hear how it started, because your story is so very cool. And so tell me how this started with an art project.
Right. So I have two companies still. Actually, the art studio is kind of was the first one. So I started Min.An Studios, which is a sculpture studio specializing in custom cast iron cookware. And so I have a background in fine art sculpture and foundry practices. So I came into casting through that way by making fine art sculptures. And cookware happened in my undergrad year because it was a vehicle for me to explore engaging an audience in a way that was resonating outside of just the sculpture itself, so that people can really start to use the things that I was making, instead of just coming to a gallery, having this sort of, involvement with it and then just kind of forgetting about it. I wasn't very interested in that. So I was doing a lot of graphic cookware, particularly waffle makers, when I was in undergrad. So cookware kind of like folded into the artwork stuff for me really early, just as I was starting to learn mold making and all kinds of stuff. So that's why cookware. A lot of times people ask, like, are you a chef? Like, or like, do you love to cook? Or it's like, it's none of that. Like, it's really just, I love cookware as a tool to gather people. And so shortly after I had graduated, I had a studio right away, and I was building a cupola, which is an iron furnace that we use to melt down radiators and bathtubs, and kind of DIY that stuff in the backyard.
Who doesn't? Who doesn't do that kind of stuff?
Yeah, that's what you do.
Right.
And the first few castings that I decided to make for a few molds were the Wisconsin skillet, because we're here in Wisconsin, and it was really it was such a off the cuff kind of idea. I did not come into this like some strategy and market research that this would be a product that would do well in the market. That was not, I was like, heck yeah, Wisconsin, like, we figured this out, like, we are like, boo, I was like proud. It was just like American, possessed with like the American dream.
Right.
And being like, we could do anything, and I'm from Wisconsin, and damn it, we made some iron melt in my studio. So that was kind of like the impetus behind it. But it cast, and you have this thing that first thing that you make, and you're just like, oh my gosh, I have this artifact, and everybody that was at that pour was just like, dude, that is cool. They were like, I want one of those. I would totally rock that every morning, and I was just like, you do, like, you like you would like use that, huh? and I was really just doing it because it was like kind of that whole vehicle of cookware with like this, that pride thing. And I just threw them together. I just threw a handle on it. Is what happened. And so from that first one, I decided, I'm like, well, we definitely got to do the Midwest, because I just saw this piece, that was like, this is a cool art piece. I just want it on the wall, like to have this thing. And then that was it, and I was like, well, clearly I'm going to make more of these, and they're all going to connect and stuff. And I actually have this really cool map that I drew like almost immediate, the day after that event, that pour. I was flying out to LA. I have a friend there that was working for Jeff Koons, who's like he's a kind of a big name artist. And as I was flying, it was only a 2-hour flight. They used to have these air like pathway, or what's it called? Air traffic maps.
Yeah.
And they had the map of the United States. And I asked all the people sitting next to me, I was like, can I just rip yours out for a second? I think I did like 7 drawings in that 2 hours, just of like where handles would go if I made the whole United States.
Right.
And so those were like the initial, inklings of like, what would like a whole map, art piece look like? Again, not thinking of this as a product at all. It was just like, this would be a really cool, just like my one gallery piece that I would want to do. And I spent the next 2 years working on making that happen. So through that process of making it, I kind of set these deadlines for myself with exhibiting that idea in different areas. And one of like kind of the big final one was going to a really radical exhibit called Art Prize. It's in Grand Rapids, Michigan. And it's like a 2-week long, like outdoor, indoor, super radical art. Like, it's like, there's no curators. You actually just connect directly with business owners. You could go into a convenience store and say, I love your convenience store. Can I hang some art there? And you have to make that like real connection. Yeah. So anyway, we got into that. We made a connection with the curator, the like director at the DeVos place, and launched a Kickstarter to help fund it to get there, because it was like I still needed to make 28 states or something. So I had this like awesome, this 2-month, deadline, and then I just like call all my friends. I'm like, yo, like I've got my best friend Kelly Ludeking. He's an amazing artist in Minneapolis. He taught me everything about back, like non-institutional casting, basically. And then some other of my friends, Ellie Reza, there's like Dan Dricken, there's all these like artists that just showed up and helped me to, realize this thing. And we had a connection. Kelly actually had somebody that he knew in a foundry that worked as an artist in a foundry. And we're like, yo, we have this, this need to like, we need more resources. We can't be like breaking iron, like, and when I say breaking iron, I mean, like we take bathtubs, break them down by hand into nacho chip size pieces. And then we have to source fuel coke, which is like coal. Like it's kind of like a hard to find sort of, material, like fuel to use, and just like get all your, just like doing an iron pour by hand is like already an event in and of itself, not to mention just making 28 castings work the first time. So that was like my first connection with, the industry was like, hey, I have this art piece. I really need it to be done, and I need the resources to just bust this out in 4 days. Like I have 4 days to make this. So it's fun. This is what I do. Wild. So I was like, obsessed, right? Possessed by like this like need to make this thing. And it was just such an awesome experience in that first, week at the foundry, where you're just like, wow, like, geez, they're casting, 5 tons of metal every 12 minutes. They're doing ductile and gray iron every week. They're switching it up, and they put us back in like the storage unit area of the foundry that had like a sand mixer, and the ladle could still come close enough so that we could lay out our mold. They basically were like, here's like kind of an area where you could just try this out, like go over there. And I just was like, oh my gosh, we get done with the mold, and it's just like, like, and like, here comes the ladle, and just throws it in. And I was just like, oh my God, this is awesome, because it just was so immediate, like there's nothing immediate in iron casting. So that was like the first, real connection I had with doing it quicker, right? But with getting back to your question.
This is fascinating. I know people want to know, like, how does this even start? It's
right. Yeah. So we had this whole, piece, we fulfilled it. Our Kickstarter did amazingly well. This was back in 2010 or whatever, 2010, 2011, I think, is when we had a Kickstarter, which was like at the infancy of Kickstarter, where it was like nobody was on Kickstarter hardly. So we got a lot of attention because we were like this kind of black goose, like, black duckling that was like, I have this idea, I want to do this thing. And Kickstarter was like, this is wild. And so people got like funded in like an hour. It was just nuts. Like I had a really low goal. I think I needed like, I was like, can I have $1,000 to, make this thing, even though it costs way more than that to do that, that's again, my naivety of what it takes to make, when I was just starting this, but yeah, it's funded by like 6,000%. It was just like, all of a sudden people from all over the world were finding this project and backing it. And I was like, what? I was like, I didn't even know where these people were from. Like, it was like, people from Azerbaijan or like, or like Georgia or like, and I'm just like, why do they care? Like this is an American, art piece. Like, this is so American, but they were like, just, they were like, go for it. And so that funding and that initial like interest was like kind of the nut of the market that we started to see, because people then came back and said, I would just love my state. Like, would you just make California for me? Or like, would you just do like Georgia for me? And so I was like, wow, like you want like a piece of that? It was just like, I guess I could, because I have patterns, So it was really just, I kind of stumbled into it. It was just like people really just gravitated towards what it represented for them. And I love that about it. It was like, this was exactly what fulfilled me as an artist, was just, it meant something to somebody already, and it meant something different to different people, even if it was the same state. It's like everybody had a story that they came into it with, and they wanted to use it for different reasons. And those experiences just like resonate with, with like a whole lot of people. And so that was what was really the driver behind, thinking or making a decision of like, this maybe should be something else, that this isn't just an art piece anymore. This is actually like, it's unsustainable for me to keep making them. And then two, they're very expensive to make by hand. So, and people really, they were like, some people are able and, completely willing to pay an artisan price for that. But most people aren't, and they just really loved it. And so that was where I was like, I need to find a way and make this like, to manufacture this sustainably. So that's where the decision came. It was really, it was like I hemmed and hawed, like, should I partner with somebody? Should I license that? Or, do I really want to do this? But it was, and at the end of the day, it was like, I do really want to do that, actually, because I want to have that voice behind the product to say that this is, making the design decisions, making the personality decisions of the product itself, like just how it connected with people was important to me. So for better or for worse, I started a second company. And still wonder if that was a good idea. Just kidding. No, it's awesome because, I kind of have my foot in both sides of, art and industry still. And I sort of always did. I mean, I've always kind of worked, with big projects like public art pieces, and some of my earliest jobs were working for factories doing mold making. I mean, that was what I did. So I kind of like, I always loved the industry side of industry, just like industry for industry's sake, but I also loved pushing it and innovating it and really making it do uncomfortable things because I know it can, because I know that iron has this like just really amazing, history of being both decorative and utilitarian. And you have, and I like to muddle that a lot of times, like in what I make, that it doesn't just have to be one or the other. It can be utilitarian and beautiful, and
yeah, we've lost that over time. I mean, if you go back and you look at the old books about the old cookware and the other products that cast iron manufacturers made, you realize that they did have a lot of decorative pieces.
Right.
And those just aren't made anymore. So to be able to put some of that into a utilitarian skillet is just a nice idea to bring back a little bit of that beauty of cast iron.
Yeah, and to kind of push kind of the conception of what like what the place of iron is, but also like what a skillet can be too. It's like, I feel like it's there's a lot of really excellent craft cookware companies today, that are making and innovating the idea of a skillet in so many different ways that are just like fascinating and very, like very studied and very well executed, and they're really into it for the utilitarian side of it, period. but also, well, I shouldn't say that. There's aesthetics, of course, to every decision that they're making, and they're beautiful, but they're all a round pan. And so like I feel like there's a vessel, as a vessel for food, there could be another voice, so there's just a lot of opportunities there to kind of play with that, and to make it something that's just that's a little bit more, a little bit more fun, like that can also live as an art piece too, still serving as a piece that just looks great on the wall.
Yeah, I mean, again, going back to the old Wagner and Griswold, I mean, they had so many pieces that were just so unique that you can't find today. Gem pans and little Turkish knot pans and things that were pretty, but then the food would come out, the baked goods especially would come out in these neat little shapes. And, so there was this creative side to it that women especially could have when they were baking, but not a lot of that was applied to the plain skillet. So I think that's neat that you guys have done the skillet. So as of today, you guys have skillets for Ohio, New York, Minnesota, Oklahoma, Texas, Michigan, Illinois, and Wisconsin.
Yes.
So what I thought,
in the USA.
In the US, yes, you have a nice USA one, which I would like to have because you don't have Florida. So what was interesting to me was when you decided, okay, we're gonna do this. We're gonna do this as a business. We're gonna have them manufactured, in a sufficient quantity where we can sell these. You had to make them more ergonomic, right? You really had to focus on, this is going to be not just an art piece, but a skillet. So where does the handle go? And what were those types of concerns when you were having to make it more useful than just pretty?
Yeah, right. I love this question because a lot of times so let me just start by saying the panhandle states get all kinds of tongue-in-cheek kind of commentary of like, why would you even put a panhandle on? There's already got a panhandle. As somebody from Florida can attest, that I'm sure that, but I'm like, do you really want to just touch the pan?
Right. You still have to have a
hand. I'm doing this for you guys. Yeah. There were a million decisions not a million, but there was, several dozen of design changes that needed to happen to make it industry moldable, because when it was an art piece, they're very detailed. I mean, they're super, I cut them by hand on a scroll saw. Like I had this ability to really be tight with it. I have resin bonded sand that I make the sand molds with so that I have much stronger sand. I spent time with the mold wash on it. So the surface texture is dialed in every single time, there's a lot of one-on-one that I'm allowed to spend with the art pieces, but when you're in production, that just needs to work every single time without somebody, babying it along. So there's decisions that needed to be made to make it moldable. It needed to be shippable, stackable. It needed to be ergonomic, like you're saying, and not just with while it's empty, but while it's full food. So that changes it too. So we had to think about where the center of gravity was with, the shape of Oklahoma, for instance, where it's you have a ton of stuff here and then there's little tail that comes out, where do you put that? And then just making it, fit on a burner, and making it realistic for people's use, making it realistic for, just for a recipe in general, for the volume of the food that it can hold. So there was a lot of design choices that needed to be totally re-envisioned from an art piece idea to in a production piece. So when you go through those, it's not just I do start with just a drawing, and I'm super old school. I learned, I learned, oh my God, I don't even remember what it's called. It's it's drawing by me, it's drafting. I draft everything, with different top view, side view, 3D view, and so I still draw the initial designs that way with a pencil, just to visualize what it needs to be, because there are some negotiations that you have to make. I mean, not every, you can't put all these crazy little nooks and crannies of a state. It has to have design rules developed that have certain radiuses that will just never go tighter than certain, certain depth, certain draft has to be, considered on everything. But when you have really tight corners, the draft has to get a little bit fudged. So you have to, you know, kind of really mess with the geometry as you're going through that design process, because it has to work not only as a drawing and as something that you can recognize as a state, but, you know, kind of walking that fine line between like, let's push the boundaries of how detailed that could be, but make it realistic to make on a molding machine and to make and pop out a brownie.
Right.
Still
Right.
needs to work, right?
Because you can't have those little teeny corners. And that's what I was wondering, like, how hard is it going to be to get food out of this thing if there's all these little teeny corners, and there aren't, like, you've accommodated for all of that. Like, I was looking at one that was up north and it had, you know, all these little rivers, and you can see the design, but it's blocked off. So your food's not going to get into those little nooks and crannies. And I was like, oh, okay. So you still have both the
Yeah.
art and the functions. I thought you guys handled that really well.
Well, thanks. Yeah, I have to fight tooth and nail all the time for like weird, just, you know, design decisions, because like, especially like with the New York skillet in the Long Island feature, that one, I mean, the foundry, the pattern makers, everybody just want to lop that thing off. They were like, nobody gives a, I was like, there are 3 million people on Long Island that will have a fit. If
Yes,
you, like,
you can't just take it out.
you can't just say that is part of the state. I'm like, you have, you know, so we had to come up with a, like, you know, with a compromised way of handling that and supporting it through through molding and shakeout and grinding and shipping, and, you know, and it has to be able to stay on there. So it was just yeah, there's a lot of stuff that I was like, you know, they're like, they're not even going to use it, like, what is the point? You know, they're all utility all the time. I was just like, well, I was like, unfortunately, you don't determine the shape of the state. So it's like, you know, I mean, there's like, and I guess people could argue with the Michigan state skillet. There's the UP and the lower, the LP, you know, the mainland. We didn't make both. We made just the mainland. And boy, did I hear from those people up north. Like they were irritated that we did not put you know, the UP on it, because it's part of the state, and I totally get that. But it was also, you know, it also made that skillet super weird. I mean, they had to be separated. So there was design decisions to just separate certain states that had that kind of like, yeah, Michigan's very unique because it's almost like two states in and of themselves. So you know, I wanted to make it so that they could actually use it, you know, and store it and ship it, and you know, and all the things that I was saying. So eventually people from the UP, we do have that drawing. It will go into production one day, but we need a few more of those people to, like, you know, either make some babies and grow that population, or just vote on it, you know.
Vote on it. Right, because you have a process for this. I was reading this on your website where you ask people if they want a new state, that they have to vote on it, and then there's a pre-order. So how does that work now?
Yeah, so we know that there's a certain threshold. We have, you know, it costs a certain amount of money no matter what state or how big it is to make stuff. Like it's about the size of like a down payment for a house or like a brand new truck. I mean, this is not a small amount of money. This is not like, oh, it's just $10,000. It's like that times 3 plus some, you know. So you have to really be careful about which, you know, we have to be careful about which ones we're choosing, because turns out not every state is probably going to be viable as a product, because there's either not enough population up there, or there's not enough like legit interest, you know. Like we found some states are huge on state pride. Like we live in a state that is just like massive state pride, you know, and I think there are, you know, probably about half of American states are, but then there are some states that are just like, you know, they're like,
I have to admit, I kind of wonder if Florida is one of those kind of states, because so much of our population are implants. You know, they were up north, they've come down south, or they're from down south and they've come up north. And so we have such a mixture that although everyone seems to be kind of happy to be here because they moved here,
right,
they didn't grow up here, their parents didn't grow up here, their great grandparents didn't grow up here. And so it's just different. And we're just, personally, I don't think we're taught state pride that way. I think some of that's taught, and
probably, yeah, you know, especially if there's like a huge sports, like for me, I grew up in Green Bay, Wisconsin. some people might know that right away, that's Packer State.
Sure.
Like we are a Packer State, and people get up at 9 a.m. to start tailgating. Okay, so
Right.
it's like this is all about like not just like the team pride, but like it's a Wisconsin, like team. So there's this like inherent just like enthusiasm for just being here,
For the state, right?
for
And
the
here
state
it's more of like enthusiasm for the football or for the college, but then people leave when they're done
right.
college. So then, but I was reading on your website because I was really wondering, like, what are the circumstances that have people really wanting to buy a skillet in the shape of their state? And I was amazed. I mean, you have moms who are sending their kids off to college and they're sending them off with a skillet to remind them of home.
Yeah.
And then there were, people who were getting married. And so,
Yes.
that's a good gift because a lot of times they're moving away. And then you just have, like you said, just simple family pride of their state. And so they put that skillet down for football games or for Thanksgiving or Christmas or whatever. And I just think that's really cool. I wish that we could incorporate more of that down here. And I think this is kind of a neat way of starting that. And put your brownies, and because I think there are some foods that lend themselves to this, right? You got your desserts, appetizers.
Anything that's like shareable, right? So like anything that you're gonna serve in the skillet is like what this pan is all about. Like I'm not even apologetic about this not being for everything. Like you're not gonna make your family dinner in this pan tonight, like I'm gonna use my 10 and 12 inch, like I have old Wagners, I have Lodge, I have my buddy Nest, like I've got all kinds of people's skillets that we use every single day, twice or 3 times a day. But we get invited to a potluck or we're going to a tailgate, we're bringing our dip in that pan, of course, like we're gonna ice break that table conversation immediately,
Right.
and that's all that it serves. It serves that like that awkward kind of like if you're gonna go to a a spread somewhere and you got people just like kind of moving through a line and not talking to each other, like I think that's weird. I just think that's weird. So I feel like having something that's a conversation piece at the table in the potluck line, is like just the thing you need to just make that one comment to start connecting with people.
Right.
Like if that's the tool, that is exactly what it's for, is like just to break that ice with that person. It's just like this pan, like what is the deal with this pan? Slash the brownies in there are really good, but
right.
They get it, so it's really it's just for the social. I mean, we call them a party pan, because it's just it is for that, it's for gatherings, it's for people to bring a smile. Some people don't use them at all, and I'm totally okay with that too. I'll see people that just hang them at the cabin because it represents like something, homey, rustic, like they kind of feel the up north woods sort of like vibe, vibes really well in cabins or on a ranch, and people will just use it as an art piece. And I'm like, that's great too, like if that's the function for you and that's the conversation piece that where it needs to live in that environment, brilliant, I just love that. But you can also use it for omelets or like scrambled eggs. You can also pull it down for, any kind of appetizer. So yeah.
Now, a couple of things with that, because the handle is not always at the 6 o'clock position, and because it might look a little weird if you hang it from the 12 o'clock position on your wall, you have come up with something pretty nifty using a magnet where you can hang it so that it's geographically north and south, right?
Yes. So that was early art piece, like kind of conception, because hanging them on the wall needs to be beautiful. Like if you just throw a nail, I mean, any other skillet can just hang on a nail and super easy, that's fine. But these are geographic. I mean, they have this visual recognition of being right or wrong. Like if they're, hanging. So yeah, the universal solution was magnetism, because these are ferrous, these are 100% ferrous. So they, I love that solution because it just floats on the wall. I mean, it just is this really slick, way of presenting it. It's hidden. It's just about the pan itself and nothing else behind it or above it or around it. There's just, it just kind of, it holds its own place. So and it fits for every single state, any kind of thing that we make plus regular cookware too. I mean, it's like, we find a lot of times people will buy the magnet hanger with the pan, not really knowing exactly what they might be getting. And then they do, you know, they use it and they're like, oh my gosh, this is so strong. It's so strong. It's like, it'll wipe data off your phone. So it's like really terrifyingly, like I have to sign for it when it comes in. Like the UPS guy is like, what is this? How do I always have to make sure that you get a signature? Like, apparently they're like dangerous. So a lot of them are.
Yeah.
And then people will buy like 2 or 3 more after that, just not the pan, but just more of the hangers, because they're like, this is so slick. And
yeah, nobody else has those. People should definitely go check those out on your website, because that's really cool.
Yeah, and they're, you know, we hand make them. I mean, they're not the magnet themselves, but the wood blocks that they come on are all, you know, they're just a maple block, and it just kind of, it supports the pan itself, so that there's some surface area for it to like hang on, and it's not like super weird and wobbly, because you don't want it to feel even slightly like
it's too heavy.
Yeah.
And you know, I should have asked you this before. Do you happen to have one of your skillets there in front of you?
Yes, I do.
You can show us one of the states.
Yeah. Oh, I think I don't have the USA skillet, but it's just this one. I didn't have one from like a clean one from stock, so this is one that we use. Of course, there's like, you know, I'm like, I take really good care of my pans.
Yeah. You're cooking them. You're cooking them.
I do. We do actually. We use this one for what was it? Skillet s'mores the other day.
Oh, nice.
And so we had like a couple people over, and we're always trying to convert people to skillet s'mores. That's like our #1, you know, thing. So like and this is a super old one. This is where it all started. Feline Studios.
Oh, wow. Now, what do they say now on the back? Do they say American Skillet Company on the back now?
Yes, they do. And of course I don't have one.
That's okay. I'll get an image from you and I'll put it in the video so folks can see it.
So they have, I know. So this was part of the like a very early run. I think we only made like 700 of these, like, you know, tops. And so everybody that has one of these, and it only happened on, I think there was Illinois and Minnesota have some feline ones too, but we had to like buzz this off of the, you know, of the pattern, and then put our insert tag on the back for like the new thing. And so now it was like never coming back. So whoever has those has got some
collector's items. Nice. Yep. Now, okay, couple important questions for folks. What do you season your skillets with?
Yes, so we do a blend of flaxseed and canola is what we started with. And the reason for that was, as a lot of people have talked about, the polymerization, you know, the smoke points and the way that the polymer chains work for different oils have different results. And so some of them are really hard, like flaxseed is like super, it just is a drying oil. It's like, I call it the food grade cousin of linseed oil, because it just, if you let it sit out, it'll become its own hard oil. We've done that once in a gun. It was not really great, like in a spray gun. It was just like, and it's dead. And so it'll just dry on its own. And so and it has a very low smoke point. So once you bring it past that smoke point, it's extremely hard, which makes it a great seasoner. But it's so hard sometimes that it doesn't really fold around a corner, or, you know, around the outside, like outside radiuses of a skillet very well. So they tend to have a delamination problem if you just use flax, so we started to see that kind of early on, where we were like, you know, I don't really like that it can just break off.
Yeah, it can flake off, I heard. Yeah,
you know, like that was not okay for us. So so we did a ton of testing, experimenting. I mean, we put it through, we were like drilling, I mean, we were like testing thermal mass, we were testing different heat cycles, we were testing all kinds of different oil combos between grapeseed and flaxseed, and, you know, and like, I mean, everything from avocado to coconut oil, I mean, everything. So we decided that I like canola because it softens the flax a little bit, and it keeps it that black color. So like and that's really just is totally a style choice. Like, it doesn't mean that it's more seasoned than other pans right off the bat. It's just it's an aesthetic choice. I
Mhm.
don't really, like, we are not trying to look like a vintage pan. Like, we are not a vintage pan, you know? And so that just was like, that's what grapeseed oil tends to look like. Grapeseed is kind of classically like, you know, very light brown, yeah, which is beautiful, like has a beautiful bronze, you know, color to it. And then they all turn black after you use them.
Right
You know,
after
they
you
all
use
kind of,
them.
yeah, as you're, you know, through use and heat and, you know, and everything, it just, they'll get black eventually, but we just kind of like it since people might not always be using them every single day, like a regular pan. We just wanted it to get to that color quicker. So that's where flaxseed
Right.
kind of, that's its function, really. We kind of like just use it for color, but also because it does have a really hard, you know, nice seasoning. So so I like the results of that. You know, we've kind of gone through different processes to get to our seasoning. We started with wood fires, if you can believe it. Like, we used to crack wood. Yeah, it's like, we just must like to do it the hardest way first.
Yeah.
And then we try to innovate from there. But yeah, we were buying like cords of wood and we were like splitting wood forever and making these fires and adding air, you know, oxygen to them so that we'd have a super rockin' hot, clean fire. We got so good. I mean, we're so good at making fires. But and then we were like, hey, we should probably get an oven. Like, an oven would like really make this more steady, wouldn't it? And so of course we bought this old oven and just completely hacked it. We tore out all of the insulation, all of the thermocouples, all of the digital, you know, we turned it into a digital dial so that we could actually, like, we went from like splitting wood to like geeking out with like a digital, you know, read thermometer and making like designing our own Arduino, you know, like on an Arduino chip. Like we're like, we're gonna make like a heat cycle that ramps up and down and that we can control it digitally with these dials. And yeah, we got like super geeky about it. So then it got a little easier because then it was like, okay, we know what our temperatures need to be. We know what the timing is. We know our application process. We know our oil, and those are sort of the like key ingredients for getting your result, right? Because it's about application, how much you put onto it, and how you're putting it on. You know, what temperature the pan is when you're putting it on. What kind of bake out cycles you have? Are you bringing it up? Are you letting it soak? Are you there's a million. It's like, it really isn't rocket science, but it can get really geeky fast.
Yes. Yes. As someone who's been digging into cast iron for a while, yes.
Yeah, you know,
fall into deep waters pretty fast. Yeah.
It does. Yeah. So I do think I appreciate when people, you know, have their methods that they've come up with, because they, you know, that they really had to go down that rabbit hole, you know, to get to that method, because you can't just kind of like blindly, you know, go into it. You do need to do you have to have a little understanding of the oil that you're choosing, and like, you know,
right. Everything has a point and a purpose. Yeah.
Yes.
So I like to give some stats. So for you normally compare a 10-inch pan. Now your pans, we're not going to measure them by inches because they're by state.
Yeah.
So
East to west, north to
right,
south.
right. So I went with the USA skillet. So your USA skillet is $130, which is really on the low price of these, you know, craft modern companies. And the weight is 4 pounds, which is the lowest, which is very nice. So it is very easy to cook with and use for, you know, for like your s'mores and your, you know, all your little things on the stove, or to put in the oven if you're going back and forth. It's just, it's a nice lightweight. And I had a suggestion.
Okay, I'm all ears. Bring it on.
California. I don't live in California, but I'm really wondering how you're going to do California, because like you said, it's got to fit on a burner, right?
Yep.
So I don't know if you've already gone here yet, but I was really thinking of a griddle. Like, have you talked about something that would be different than a skillet, or would that just really make everybody mad?
At this point, I'm not super concerned about the madness, because I feel like there's always going to be, you know, a sliver of, you know, that somebody disagrees with whatever you're going to do. So I'm just like, you know what? I'm like, that's fine. You can go ahead and be mad about this, but we think about it so deeply, like literally, I take it so seriously when we're making these design shows, but California will be the the trailblazer away from the one-handled skillet. I can tell you that. And we've already got the design.
All
I kind of
right.
anticipate it to be the next stage, but I can't. So I'm like Switzerland. Like I don't make a decision because I just am like, we should do that state because heck it, like let's do it. So we really do need the votes because that is the democracy of American Skillet.
I like that.
It's
It's so fitting. It's so fitting. You have to vote on the next state.
Yeah, we
I
take
love
votes.
it. But I think a griddle could work. And I'm thinking for Hawaii, like little servers, like little teeny independent servers.
Yeah.
You can just arrange them on your table.
And like only people from Hawaii will know the arrangement. They're gonna be like, everybody else that buys it, they're gonna be like
what are these things?
Yeah.
Right,
Well, I can tell you, Hawaii also is designed, and it's a muffin tin. Okay.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it's gonna be little muffin tins and dippers, for like hot, oil or whatever, like just having it just sit as a sideline because it's so little, and I mean, the main island's not bad. It's like, it's like a 4-inch like skillet, but then you got this like train of, same thing with Alaska. It's got this whole tail of islands. It's like, you can't really like just ignore those. I mean, you have to acknowledge them in some fashion.
Right. Or it's not going to look like Alaska. It'll look like a box.
Right. Yeah. So I think those states have this really exciting opportunity for me, I think, as to like just kind of re-envision their use and like be a little like pigeonhole them a little bit into like how you would use that skillet because they have these unique features, right? So you have to do something with that. And so I think we're definitely going to have some fun with pairing very specific recipes. Like this is what this is what you could do in this, area that's weird. And then having, like, and so it's kind of like, it's, it's like an apple skewer pan, like if you ever heard of those, they're so specific. You're not gonna like just make whatever in there. You're gonna make a little apple skewer thing, or there's lots of different fillings you can put or whatever. But I think it's comparable to that, where you've got like, it's kind of for like, just this one thing, like if you're gonna use it, or don't use it at all, just use the mainland and and just have them be empty.
I can see a lot of people buying that to celebrate like a honeymoon or a vacation that they spent there. I think that would be really cool.
Yeah, I mean, and these are destination states, too,
right?
By the way, I mean, they really are like, I definitely think that they're valid, candidates for election. So,
but folks need to vote. That's where we're going with this. Folks need to go to your website. So your website is AmericanSkilletCompany.com. And people need to vote for their state if it's not already out there, or just go ahead and buy their state pan or a USA pan.
Yeah, and to like kind of add to because I think I didn't answer really very well your vote question, because the process of it is like it starts with like the first 500, right? So we need 500 just of people that said, I would buy that, I want that. And then that triggers a pre-order. So that means that like we'll go to those people and we don't spam, like I write all of the emails and like all of the newsletters and all the everything. So I am not I'm not going to consistently spam people. So just know that like when you sign up for it, like we're not going to talk to you until that makes, the like top of the list. So once that happens, we connect with those people and say, hey, turns out you guys have triggered a pre-order. Now it's time to like actually put your, money where your heart is. Yeah. And so then we have this, we have a very enticing deal that we give people. So it's not going to be $130. It's usually as first like kind of like supporters of that idea, they get like a pretty rocking deal on buying it, and we know how many we need. And so that's where it needs to, we ask two things. We say, get on the pre-order, like pre-order the pan and invite 2 more people, because that's what we're going to need to actually realize that. Right. And then if we meet that number, which I think is like 300 people, like we need 300 minimum of like people to actually order the pan for it to then like legitimately
Mhm.
win that you know, that production.
The
So
next spot, yeah.
yeah, and so, and I think that by sharing it, you know, it really is, it's such a grassroots thing. It really is like,
Mhm.
you know, it's not just about one person like saying, I would like that. It's like, hey, like, you know, if you make it to 300, because 500 people on a list is very small. I mean, most of those people are not going to follow through on that.
Mhm.
So that's where it's like we have a double kind of like two phases. And then from the point of like finishing that pre-order to production is around 7 months. So it takes like 7-ish months to get to realize like design, pattern making, sampling, you know, production and shipping. Because like new designs, they are, as you've probably heard, they just go through a million different iterations and like, you know, and testing on stuff, and you don't want to get it wrong. So it takes, that design time takes like forever, like 5 months. So yeah, so that's what it looks like. And then once it's out, then it goes, you know, then we connect with retailers too. We also have a list for stores that have been like, I am ready to order. So that's also considered in the on the vote pre-order too. So people can, it's not just about that, you know, like just single votes. It's like stores, you know.
Very
So
smart. You know, there was one other technical question that some folks may want to know, and that is, are your pans smooth on the bottom, the cooking surface?
yes, so we don't machine
You don't do the
our casting.
CNC,
Nope, for a couple of reasons. I have a
breakfast
visitor.
time.
I have a visitor.
I would too, but mine's
Yeah.
outside. Yeah, that's
She's my coworker. Yeah, she's you know,
nice.
supposed to be in the office, but she's really slacking. She's also 4 and it's Saturday. Anyway, so yeah, so what we have decided to do is to make, we have cores for our casting, so that just is a secondary tool. We invested up front in the front end of the process so that the castings shake out smoother than what a normal green sand casting would.
Okay.
Because we don't really want to spend a ton of time like cleaning, you know, cleaning meaning like grinding a crazy shape.
Right, that would be very difficult.
It is, even though we still do that. Like the foundry does a ton of work on getting us a really nice casting. You know, I mean, they make the castings beautiful. They clean them up. They do a second blast on them even so that we have just like a really great surface finish. But even after that, they come to us before they go to seasoning, just because we are touching the crap out of these things. Like we go through, all of our gloves have their fingertips cut off, and we're like, one hand is like, you know, got a diamond burr, and the other one is just like feeling it like braille. Like we're just like what? Where's the texture? So we geek out about texture even on the outside, the bottom side, because we're really concerned about glass top cook surfaces. We want people to not feel concerned about
Like
that.
scratch it, yeah.
Yeah, you know, but we don't. The reason why we don't currently machine any of those is one, it would make it extremely expensive, because every single one of them is a new fixture and a new program to put it into, you know, the CNC. And honestly, the castings that we get from the cores, and the core is basically a resin bonded, super hard, it's a shell core, so it's like a really hard, like inside, you know, the inside of the pan is its own mold that's like a very, very fine sand, resin bonded. So it's got, the metal just like glides right across it.
Wow.
And it shakes out so beautifully. It's like 300 times more fine than a green sand, and it's more reliable. It doesn't have the variables that kind of are part of the green sand process, because it's not relying on humidity, or you know, the way that the clay and sand and the ash are mixing that day, or the way that, you know, it sticks to, like sometimes green sand gets sticky for some reason, you know, like on the pattern. So there's lots of variables in green sand that we eliminate by core casting. So,
and how can you spell what you're saying? Core, C-O-R-E?
Yeah, C-O-R-E, and it's a shell core. So it's just a type of core where basically it's a hot box, they call it. So it's a cast iron tool, and it goes into a shell core machine. throws down the sand. It's like a resin bonded sand, and it bakes it. And so then just like literally 3/16, maybe a 1/4 inch, I don't even know if it's that thick, of the outside of that like form get hard as heck, like a sugar cube, you know, and then it flips it around, and the middle of that sand, like the whole cavity fills up with sand, only the outside gets baked hard, and then the inside is just loose sand that they recycle again and they use for the next batch. So it's a really like thin, it's why they call it a shell core,
Okay.
because it uses very little bit of sand, because that sand's really expensive. It's very fine, it's very refined, and it's an extra, you know, and those can be really heavy, so like you don't really want it to be this super huge chunk of sand. You want it to have an ability to expand, you know, with the metal expansion while you're casting the piece, but it also has these little ears on the side that sticks down into the green sand, and it has to just sort of suspend itself inside of the mold. So we make 2 castings at the same time, with the inside being like a shell core. So they call it a bunch of different things, like a sandwich core, like, you know, I don't know what else they call it, piggyback molds, and like they have everybody's got like a different like street name for it, but it's shell core casting. And so
That's cool. You're the first manufacturer I've talked to who said that they're using that. So that's really interesting. But it also makes sense that you're not using a CNC to smooth the skillet, because it's not the type of skillet that you would use to make flapjacks or something like that. You know,
Right.
or you know, you're not using it in that way. So there's really no need in trying to have a smooth surface at all. So
Right.
so I think that would definitely be a necessary expense for, you know, really for no
what
reason.
for what we're doing. And plus, like, you know, there are consequences to machining, you know. I mean, a lot of times the process looks like you have a really thick casting in green sand and gray iron, and then they machine down to the thickness so that they can control the thickness of the casting itself, which is great. But the second you break that surface of the cast surface, you unleash a whole variety of unknowns of, like, it could be porous casting, you know, like it could be there could be all kinds of, you know, and when you're grinding it, you can have warping that can happen. You have you know, it's a difficult process. I mean, it really is. I give props to people who have you know, who have put that into production, but it does, I'm always curious what their fallout rate is on that, because
Interesting. No, I haven't heard about that, but that makes sense. Yeah, because you're cutting into the iron, and iron is very brittle.
Yeah, and honestly, the cast surface is, you know, is a type, is, you know, I don't want to say like it's like a different metal, but it's like, you know, that's the outside, it's the outside, it's not the inside of the casting. It's like it creates a skin that's very you know, homogenized, and then the inside of it, it could have a lot of porosity, a lot of gas, a lot of stuff that you just kind of don't know, and that's okay. You know, that's not a bad thing. It's just kind of the natural part of like metal, you know, like metal casting. But once you break that, you start to unveil those, you know, you sort of like unleash the ugly head of like casting. You got to deal with that itself. So so that can be challenging. And plus, like, you know, the core castings come out just amazingly smooth. I mean, they're beautiful. They have a tooth to them. They're still sand, which I love for the seasoning, because you just need something. Yeah. Like, I mean, I'm sure anybody that's got a super duper smooth pan can attest, like, it's a little finicky to keep that seasoning on there without it streaking and beating up, you know, and that's okay too. That's fine. It's just that we are kind of like, we're on the like aesthetic, you know, like if there was like a needle of priority, I guess, for like us, it's like it has to look really good and also perform well. But I think like we're probably on the 60%, like it needs to really just like look really good, you know, and then 40%, you know, like you know, it's not like the thing that's going to make or break, you know, the use of that. Like, we're not trying to be like a performance skillet. I guess is what I'm trying to say.
I love it, and I can't believe I'm looking at the time. We've gone an hour. So
Sorry.
no, I'm I appreciate your time because
Geeking out, yeah.
yeah, we'll just geek out for as long as it takes to nail this down. I love it. I love the art behind it and the American spirit behind it, because all of the companies that I'm interviewing are American made companies,
Yeah.
but it's just so much more evident when your product is an American state or the USA. So I just think it's great. And I really appreciate hearing all the different ways that you went about it and the thoughts behind it, because people just don't appreciate what goes into it if they don't know what goes into it.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, it's not common knowledge. I mean, I would say
Right.
that, you know, metal casting in general, a lot of people just, they think that things are stamped out or
Right.
cut out or something, you know, it's like, they don't realize that there's like so many processes involved. And every single one of them has like a trillion variables that can just make it like not work, you know? And there's humans and science involved. And then there's like, just, they call it the black arts for a reason. There really is like kind of, it is like there's an unknown sometimes. Some days you're just like, why is this not working? It was just, you know, we ran this yesterday, we ran 400 of them yesterday, and now today every
Wow.
single one of them is like sucking. So, you know, it's just you deal with that. And so people just they don't know, you know, you just, this is why it's so great that you're digging in. I think your questions are amazing because you know, everybody's got kind of everybody that you've interviewed has a little bit different experience as they've really, you know, as experts in what they do, to help bring that narrative forward, in that it's not black and white, you know, on
No.
how these are made, like not at all. And this is why there's not that many cookware companies, you know, in general, I think. Like
Right. Right. There aren't that many, and it explains the price of them and the value of them and how they'll last forever. So, well, I appreciate this so much. We may have to do this again and just find more to dig into, because this was fun, and I think viewers are going to really enjoy this.
Cool. Good.
All right. Well, I appreciate it. I appreciate it. Alisa Toninato, and everybody check out American Skillet Company.com.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thanks so
Take
much,
care.
Ashley.